In the Gospel reading today, you heard how Jesus of Nazareth was credited with saying, "If you have faith, even the size of a mustard seed, you will be able to say to that mountain, 'Move from there, move into the sea,' and it will happen." When we hear that, we're likely to say, that's nonsense. That's why religion is so unbelievable. We don't believe in those miracles. Water being turned into wine, the parting of the sea, calling people out of their graves, opening blind eyes, curing incurable diseases. What next? But in one moment of imagination, have a television experience, an everyday miracle of watching the World Cup played in Brazil, being beamed into your living room, while you are held in that amazing hypnotic achievement. Listen once more to the essential words, to the meta words of Jesus. The words flowing underneath like the flow of great lakes of water far beneath the surface of the earth. Let these words become a transformational experience for you. As he says to our worrying, cynical, overstressed existence, your God is too small. You can be healed. Move your mountains. Be amazed. Open wide your hearts and minds. In those 5 sentences, we can all find some point for us. Your God is too small. You too can be healed. Move your mountains. Be amazed. Open wide your minds and hearts. Yes, Jesus was using extravagant language. Did he mean his words literally, or was he saying, look, be extravagant in the way you think about life, moving mountains into the sea, because we're all so limited in our fearful legalities, our low expectations of ourselves and others, our constricted worldview. Be extravagant for a change. Your God is too small. You see, we become hoarders of our stresses, hoarders of our memories, hoarders of this and that, victims of our hoardings or other people's hoarding. Am I talking about the piles of letters that clutter up your desk? Or am I talking about the wagon load of worries that are weighing on your mind? Am I talking about households full of no longer usable clothing? Or am I talking about our overloaded minds of what we might have done, could have done, should have done? Many people have iPads and iPhones quietly carrying addresses of people they barely know. Data banks of addresses they will never use. Apps long since dormant. Yes, indeed. On Friday night, my iPhone froze. In effect, it decisively declared, I've had enough. Either you clear all these 20 or so apps from my face, or you're going to be frozen. Fix it, or you're frozen. And as I sat wondering how to restore life to this dead specimen of an iPhone in my hand, my eye fell on this book of Mitch Albom. Some of you have read his books, Tuesdays with Maury, or The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. I've referred to them. But this little book says, have a little faith. I soon realized that whatever faith he was writing about, it was not the faith that was going to fix my iPhone. For the mountains of worries on my mind day by day, we need faith, but faith of a peculiar kind. Like the grid of our griefs that close down our coping capacities, we need faith of a different kind. This last week I've been close to the tragedy of 3 young people. The unspeakable sadness that would tie us down, the constrictions of such events, the enclosure of so much personal and interpersonal pain. And then I visited one of our people in palliative care. She has had her times of sadness, as many have. But she said, as she reflected on her life as she lay there, I've had a wonderful life. And then she added, the fact that I found St. Michael so late in my life has been one of the great joys. So for me, the constriction of the tragedy and the sadness suddenly gave way. William Carlos Williams, the doctor in America who became a poet, in one of his poems said, quietly the flower opens its petals. My brain is a flower. Through my door came a person with an amazing story of how in just a fleeting moment, a person changed her way home. She'd never gone that way before, but on this day, she changed course. Came on a huge crisis, saved a person's life. Of course, there could have been half a dozen different outcomes. But for one person, on this one day, at this early hour of the morning, the right person was there, and a life was saved. Life and God can be reduced to desperate grief and dreadful fear. And life and God can be opened to a transformational moment. A death is intercepted. Life triumphs in that moment. And if you hear a story like that, celebrate it. The imaginative extravagance of it. Oh, tell of his might. Oh, sing of his grace, whose robe is the light, whose canopy space. In one of those inexplicable moments, as I sat with a coffee mug in my hand, I picked up an article written by Con Karapanagiotidis, and he wrote, imagine if we saw the potential. Imagine if we saw the opportunity. Imagine if we embraced our moral imagination rather than our fears. Imagine if we could do this. He said, he wrote, anything could happen. And I thought, anything? Like faith that will move mountains? Of fear and prejudice? Oh, and so he wrote on. At the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, we live, breathe, and work towards a simple vision that our great nation protects those who seek our refuge. That we are a nation whose heart beats proud to save the lives of refugees. That once here we welcome refugees and allow them to contribute and realize their full potential. Imagine it. It's not charity, he wrote, but an investment in our future. Imagine the opportunities. Last week, a very wealthy man of this city wrote in the newspaper about men's health. It's right on target for us here at St. Michael's, because this week, Thursday of this week, Sage will meet, please note, and I'm going to be talking about men's health for Men's Health Week. About men managing their emotional stress, their emotional strengths, and finding their emotional satisfactions as they traverse the older years of life. It is a complex but compelling issue. Not least that we hear so much about depression and how men lead the women by a long shot in the depression business. Now, apart from giving loads of antidepressants to men who are depressed, we need to note that little is said about how depression can be prevented. Further news you heard this week underlined how young people, kids at school, are being prescribed antidepressants and antipsychotic drugs. But so little being done with the talking therapies as part of the prevention of depression, prevention of early mental problems. How we can do this? We can do this. Years ago, a very significant book was written on how one of the common features of psychological illness and disorders is the experience of being demoralized. Demoralized. It occurs in armies, it occurs in workplaces, it occurs in schools, it occurs in sporting clubs, it occurs in our own personal lives. We become demoralized. It is the experience of losing faith in the present, in the future, in the capacity to move our mountains of can't do so that we can see the roadway ahead leading to what we can do. You see, I know plenty of people who are experts at putting road signs, stop signs in front of me, in front of you. There are the road signs. Stop. You can't do this. Go no further. We need to move some of these signs away so that we can see that the green light is to follow. The possible is to come. We need to go further. Yes, I quoted King Henry's words to his army. I quoted those words some time ago because his army, Shakespeare's play, his army had lost heart. Their spirit was low. They could lose the battle. Where's the king? Where's the king, they said. They thought that he too had given up. But then he stepped forward, remember? And he spoke to them. He said, "This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbours and say, tomorrow is Saint Crispian. Then he shall strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispian's day. This story shall good men teach his son. And Crispian shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers." The power of his words and the power of his presence rebuilt their faith, lifted their spirits out of their despondency and demoralization, to reconstruct the image of themselves and what they could do, to reimagine the kind of people that they will be and could become, and by which they would be remembered. So the task before us is to remove our mountains, to reduce the mountains, to restore our capacity to make the mountains manageable. Be extravagant in your imagination. If nothing else, in your imagination, your mountains will become reintegrated into a new reality. Conquer the mountain. Convert the mountain. Cope with your mountain. How will you do it? Have that extravagant belief that even the largest mountain of your worries, of your stress, can be renegotiated. It is the belief in possibilities. Rather than being overwhelmed by the size of the mountain, do as people always have done. Go in search of new methods of reducing the size of your mountain, reducing your fears of the mountain, or your demoralization in face of the mountain. Have an extravagant belief in yourself. That's what Jesus of Nazareth was saying. He said, your faith is too small. Focus right there on yourself to do something about your inner self, about your mountain of worries. Then take hold of the power of yourself to see your mountains of distressing experiences, mountains that can be reduced in size. There it is. Take hold of your belief in yourself, he said. Have an extravagant belief and readiness to embrace the power of your faith, the faith that is given, as the positive energy in your life. We of the new faith have been saying this all the time. Let's move away from talking about faith as if you've got to believe this, believe that, believe something else. See faith as a positive energy in your life, as an energy that feeds good feelings, positive motions in your life, as an energy that restores an open way ahead, as an energy of hearts and minds that are wide open in a full embrace of a religion, a good religion that will lift your mood, that will bring a containment to your anxiety, that will increase your adaptational possibilities. Michael Eigen, a psychoanalyst, wrote this in his book, Flames from the Unconscious. He wrote, a lot of therapy is about the slow recovery of faith. A more informed faith, wiser, fuller, ready for anything, although we can never be so ready, he said. A respectful faith, in which caring has a real place. He says therapy supports a rhythm of coming through defeat, a rhythm one goes through over and over, the rhythm of faith. And what then? When you get your mountains into some better control, when you yourself have a stronger sense of containment in yourself, what will we then say? That's how things were. But now, what will we do? And so we want a sequel. What has happened, but the sequel, what comes afterwards? The thought of a sequel was put to me in a recent edition of Time magazine, where they described a new film called The Fault in Our Stars. It is the inverse of Shakespeare's Cassius, who said, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." But the film seems to say there is a fault in ourselves, in our human makeup. And it is that fault by which we sometimes become ill. And the film depicts how beautiful young people can be diagnosed with terrible problems. And this week, in Red Nose Week, we see that happening in front of our very eyes. How young people, through no fault of their own, can find themselves facing huge problems of their survival. The film shows an exquisite love of two young people in circumstances where they show that such feelings that in otherwise would in 3 minutes raise your spirits or break your heart. Here they were finding in their love a way to cope with life. The preview of the film says, it is done so movingly, you wish there could be a sequel. There it is. You wish there could be a sequel where the harshness of the mountains change and all hearts are changed by the discovery of a new softness in life. Yes, when our mountains of difficulty or dread come to take a new form, turned inside out by a faith in the best qualities of human beings anywhere, we wish for a sequel, more of the same. Strength of the Spirit, but stronger, more inspiring. So what did he say? He said, your God is too small. You could be healed in new and different ways. You can move your mountains. You'll be amazed. So open wide your hearts and minds. You can put the words of Scripture just on one side for a moment. But would you remember that one of the leading international specialists of the heart has written, I've mentioned it many times, anger and fear close the heart. Generosity and compassion and good feelings open the heart. One reason why we become people buried under our mountains of this or that is that we close our hearts constantly. We're not sufficiently open to the things that feed the heart, that open the mind. Oh yes, be extravagant at least in that. Because these words you see are not only words of Scripture, but they're words of good medicine. And sometimes the mountains and all their rugged, jagged, frightening edges and massive crevicing drops can also be absorbingly beautiful. Maybe it depends on where you're standing. Maybe it depends on the rays of sunlight on the mountain. Maybe it depends on the drift of the rain. Maybe it depends on the dawn or the dusk. But a different view changes the mountain. So faith to move mountains becomes faith to see the mountains moving us. Instead of the mountains evoking fear, the mountains can inspire, can enhance our whole life. Let me say it again. Move your mountains. Things you can do and be. Getting past your demoralization. Having an extravagant belief in possibilities. Seeing that beautiful events, beautiful relationships need a sequel. Keep them happening. And remember that even the most formidable mountains in your life can be softened, can be changed, can become friendly mountains.